ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. As tension in the Middle East escalate, Hezbollah has fired a missile at Tel Aviv, prompting Israel to activate reserve troops. Now, this comes amid the backdrop of growing international criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza and Lebanon and concerns over a potential all-out war. Meanwhile, global leaders have voiced their frustration with both Israel and the U.S., accusing them of exacerbating the situation. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss these developments are Marcin Styszyński from the Institute of Oriental Studies at the Mickiewicz University and Makram Rabah, assistant professor at the American University of Beirut. Hello, sir. Welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
So, Marcin, can you help us interpret Hezbollah's recent missile strike on Tel Aviv in the broader context of this whole Middle Eastern geopolitics?
You mean colleague Makram or me?
Mr. Marcin.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Of course, we have tragic events now in Lebanon. It's, of course, it's escalation of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, especially in the Gaza Strip. I think that we can conclude the ongoing situation by three main points. We have a preemptive attack of Israeli forces against Hezbollah, which promised retaliation after killing of main commanders, Hezbollah commanders. So Israeli forces conduct a kind of preemptive attack. It's at the same time it's a deterrence attacks. Besides, Israeli forces are encouraged by last victories in the Gaza Strip against Hamas bases and devastation of this region, despite high number of civilian casualties. Just to note, we have more than 40,000 casualties, deaths now in the Gaza Strip. So that's the price. However, Hamas is quite devastated now, according to many sources. The last point is also important because we have escalation of the proxy war. It's a kind of direct proxy war where one of the hostile side, in this case it's Israel, is involved directly against the opposite side, but still we don't have the main competitor. I mean here the hostile side, which is Iran, who the country which supports Hezbollah. However, in this case, still Hezbollah is a proxy. So although the tragic situation, we still are facing the proxy war, but it's an escalation. So step by step, we escalate the conflict, and we are hopefully we are not approaching to the direct involvement of between Iran and Israel. Some optimistic signals concern last claims of Iran that declared that they won't be involved in the conflict, directly involved. So we have kind of support, logistic, military, and of course intelligence support, but not a direct involvement. So still we are facing this proxy war, but direct proxy war. So I think these three main points are important in this field.
All right, so like you mentioned, the escalation, the temperature is boiling indeed. Mr. Rabah, can you help us dissect that a little bit further, especially when it comes to the last point of, well, even though there hasn't been direct involvement as of yet, things seem to be going that way, especially with Israel activating reserve troops for the conflict in Lebanon and the Gaza Strip. Are we looking at a possibility of an all-out war?
Well, one has to define what is an all-out war. I think what the Lebanese are experiencing now is nothing less than an all-out war. However, people tend to be stuck in history. People are always looking back at the 1982 invasion, Israeli invasion of Lebanon, or the 2006 war, and they're actually waiting for the land invasion. Because as long as they don't see Israeli boots on the ground on Lebanese territory, they believe that war is not at their doorstep. Regardless of what's happening and how Hezbollah are trying to retaliate and to quote unquote hurt Israel, I think that the destruction that the Israelis have wreaked in the south of Lebanon by destroying entire villages and driving out around 100,000 displaced Lebanese is enough proof that war is here. The issue is, and we need to explain to people that this idea that there is a kind of a clear dichotomy between Iran and Hezbollah is unfounded. Hezbollah is part and parcel of the Revolutionary Guard, and it fights on behalf of Iran. So although we don't see Iran directly fighting, it is there through Hezbollah. And I think ultimately what Netanyahu wants to do is he wants to implicate Iran in a total war and to get the international community to fight on his behalf. This idea that the Americans will stand idle if Iran gets involved is unfounded, because ultimately if Iran does use any of its quote-unquote more accurate weapons, we are looking at NATO and the international community all coming to the aid of Israel. The most devastating part here that this war in Lebanon is uncalled for, meaning that when Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, decided to engage Israel in war on 8th of October, almost a year ago, he said ultimately he wanted to support the people of Gaza. We see that the people of Gaza have been killed by the Israelis, and now the Israelis have moved to address the so-called Hezbollah challenge. At the end of the day, one of the main reasons why Lebanon and the Lebanese people are dying is because both Netanyahu and Iran are trying to cash out on the blood of the innocent, be it Israelis or Lebanese.
All right, situation seems very, very tense right there. And drawing back to what Marcin mentioned earlier, the IDF claims that they are striking preemptively for the purpose of deterrence. So, Mr. Rabah, do you think that that's a founded argument to make, or did the attempt at deterrence actually brought up more escalation? And is deterrence the actual purpose behind these preemptive strikes?
Well, I don't think that we can talk about deterrence anymore, because ultimately Israel has the ability to strike at will. The issue here is that there is a kind of absence of any kind of political thinking or a diplomatic way out of this quagmire. Ultimately, one uses weapons in order to transform them into concrete political gains. On the side of Netanyahu is hoping that by playing out the clock in a way, and by saying ultimately that he only wants to return the Israelis of the north to their villages, he can, with enough time, destroy Hezbollah's infrastructure. If Hezbollah's military infrastructure is destroyed, the problems of Lebanon will not go away, because the fact that Lebanon has been hegemonized by Iran will ultimately lead to more and more chaos. And whatever he decides to do, Netanyahu, he needs to have a political plan in mind. First of all, he has to address one of the main grievances with Iran and Nasrallah and Hezbollah use to dominate Lebanon, which is basically the Palestinian cause. If he believes that all of his political problems will simply go away through the tip of the sword, I think that he is really, really far from achieving anything. He will be able to stay in power, definitely, but we have a major problem that as long as Iran has the ability to disrupt and to spoil, we are only buying more time to reach a place where more devastation and more bloodshed will be normalized.
All right, thank you so much for the input. Marcin, we do know that Netanyahu is going to come out and address the press very soon, and of course we are still waiting for that to happen. But in the meantime, do you think that this press conference will be his attempt at calling for international allies to his aid, or is it going to be trying to address some of the political problems within, or do you think there's any other concerns that Netanyahu might be addressing in these upcoming press interviews?
I think that my colleague Makram mentioned a lot of important questions regarding Netanyahu's policy. So we shouldn't expect any peaceful stance regarding Israeli policy. I think yes, that's the deterrence policy is also important now. We should remember that Israel is quite abundant politically in the region. After the ceasefire and the truce between Iran and the Gulf states, especially Saudi Arabia, now we don't have this hostile side between Iran and some Sunni or Arab states. So that's also an important factor which encourages Israel to conduct such bloody and very tragic responses to deterrence, because in fact they are abundant in the region. Of course, despite Western assistance. Of course, we have this Western assistance, but regionally, I'm not sure if, of course, many states didn't cut diplomatic relations with Israel. However, we still, just today in the morning, we have this air strikes and missile strikes from Yemeni Houthi against Eilat. So it shows that we don't have this kind of any reactions from neighboring states of Israel. So that's also an important point, I think, for the future in the region.
Right, so definitely a lot going into this topic, and unfortunately it is stuck in a quagmire, and we are seeing an escalation of tension and hostilities. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for all your input and insight and helping us better understand this situation. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.